Surrey County, a woman from Pilot Mountain will serve time in federal prison for stealing money from her job at a bank as well as bank customers.
She was just another teller behind the counter. To the bank, an employee. To the people who came through her line, a familiar face. But to an 89-year-old man who had trusted that branch for years, she was about to become the most expensive mistake of his life. He had noticed something wrong on his statement. So he did the most reasonable thing a person can do. He walked up to the counter, to the teller he trusted, and asked her about it. According to court records, she told him the account looked fine. It was not fine. By the time he asked that question, prosecutors say $59,700 had already been drained from his savings and his certificate of deposit. And the person telling him there was nothing to worry about was the same person who had taken it. According to the Department of Justice, a 90-year-old customer at the same branch lost $42,650 from a certificate of deposit. Together, more than $102,000 vanished from two people in their late 80s and 90s, not to a hacker overseas, not to a stranger with a stolen card, to the woman behind the counter. This was not a sophisticated cyber attack. There was no phishing email, no skimming device on an ATM, no data breach in some distant server room. The danger did not come from outside the bank. It came from inside it, from the one place a person is taught to believe their money is safe. So why would a trusted teller drain the savings of two elderly customers she knew by name? And what was she hiding? To understand that, you have to go back to a small bank in Pilot Mountain, North Carolina, and a teller who had only just started the job. Pilot Mountain is a small town in Surrey County, North Carolina. Not a city, not a financial hub. The kind of place where a trip to the bank means something different than it does in a city, where the teller at the window is a familiar face, not a number. The branch was a First Citizens Bank, an established institution, the sort of bank a person trusts without ever thinking twice about it. That kind of trust is exactly what this story turns on. Because trust at a small town branch is not built on security systems or fraud algorithms. It is built on familiarity, on the same face at the same window, month after month, year after year. You stop checking, you stop scrutinizing. The teller becomes less like a stranger handling your money and more like a neighbor. And that easing of suspicion, that comfortable, human lowering of the guard, is its own kind of vulnerability. It is the gap a certain kind of person learns to slip through. The elderly are especially exposed inside that gap. Many came up in a generation that did its banking in person, that trusted institutions, that believed a handshake and a familiar face meant something. They are less likely to scrutinize a statement line by line, less likely to assume the pleasant young person at the counter could be anything other than what she appears to be. For someone looking for a quiet target, that trust is not an obstacle, it is an opportunity. In December 2023, according to court records, a new teller started at that branch. Her name was Sarah Wilson. She was in her mid-20s, and within the very same stretch of time that she was learning the regulars, learning their names, learning which elderly customers came in and what their routines were, something else was beginning. The money was already starting to disappear. The friendliness and the crime were not separated by years of slow decline. They ran side by side from nearly the beginning. Here is what investigators with the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation would later piece together. Over roughly 6 months, from December 2023 into May 2024, prosecutors say Sarah Wilson took cash directly from her own teller drawer. Not a single grab. Not one desperate moment. A pattern stretched across half a year that, according to the Department of Justice, added up to $150,450. That detail matters. A one-time theft can be a moment of weakness, a single bad decision. 6 months of repeated theft is not a moment. It is a routine that has to be maintained day after day, shift after shift, with a fresh decision each time to keep going. And every dollar that came out of that drawer created a new problem that had to be solved, because cash taken from a teller drawer leaves a hole. At the end of every shift, the money in the drawer is supposed to match the records. Take cash out, and the drawer comes up short. The shortage is the trail. The shortage is what gets you caught. A teller drawer is one of the most closely watched things in all of banking, precisely because cash is the easiest thing in the world to steal and the hardest to trace once it is gone. So she had a problem. The cash was gone, but the books still had to balance. Every single day, the numbers had to line up, or the system would flag her. And that is where this stopped being theft and became something colder and more deliberate. To hide the missing cash, prosecutors say Wilson entered numerous fraudulent transactions into the bank's computer system, fake entries. Among them, according to court records, were phony vault buy and sell transactions, the routine internal entries that record cash moving between a teller's drawer and the branch vault. Let me explain what that means, because it is the mechanical heart of this whole scheme. In a bank branch, cash is constantly moving between the individual teller drawers and the central vault. When a teller needs more cash, she buys it from the vault. When she has too much, she sells it back. Each movement is logged as a transaction, ordinary, invisible, the kind of bookkeeping no customer ever sees. By entering fake vault buys and sells, court records say Wilson could make it look on paper as though cash that was actually gone was simply sitting somewhere else in the branch. The entries were lies, but they were lies in the exact language the system expected to hear. On paper, for a while, the hole disappeared, but the numbers still did not fully cover what she had taken. So, prosecutors say she turned to the accounts of the people she knew, the elderly customers, the regulars who trusted her. Here is why that worked, and why it is so important to understand. A teller does not just handle the cash drawer. A teller has access to customer accounts. She can see balances. She can process withdrawals. And an elderly customer with a savings account and a certificate of deposit, money set aside, money not touched, month to month, is the quietest possible target. Our certificate of deposit is money deliberately locked away, often by older savers, precisely because they do not plan to look at it for a while. It is the financial equivalent of money in a drawer you only open once a year. Drain it slowly, paper over the hole with fraudulent entries, and who would ever notice? The 89-year-old noticed. According to the Department of Justice, his savings and his CD were drained by $59,700. That is not pocket change. That is a meaningful piece of a person's security, the cushion that is supposed to carry someone through their final years. And when he saw something was wrong, he did exactly what you would hope he would do. He did not stay silent. He did not assume he had made a mistake. He went to the counter and asked. Court records say she told him the account looked fine. That sentence is the whole story in 5 words. He brought his suspicion to the one person he believed could protect him, and that person used his trust to buy herself more time. There was no fraud department in that moment, no second set of eyes. The system right then was the teller standing in front of him, and the teller was the threat. This very design of a small branch where you bring your problem to a human being you trust was turned against him, and then prosecutors say she moved on to the next account. A 90-year-old customer's certificate of deposit drained by $42,650. One victim was not enough to cover what she had taken, so there were 2. Each fraudulent withdrawal patched a hole, but it created new exposure somewhere else, and so it had to keep spreading, account to account, victim to victim, like a leak moving through a wall. Before we go further, if you have a parent, a grandparent, or anyone older in your life who still banks in person, this case carries a warning worth keeping. I've put together a free scam-proof retirement guide built around the exact warning signs cases like this keep showing us. How insider bank fraud works, what to watch for on an elderly relative's statements, and the questions to ask before it is too late. You can grab it through the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. It is free, and it is built to be shared with the people who need it most. For roughly 6 months, it held. The fake vault entries masked the cash shortage. The drained customer accounts filled the gap. The books, on their face, balanced. And a man in his late 80s was walking around believing his savings were intact because the teller had told him so. As far as he knew, the matter was closed. Most people, hearing reassurance from a trusted source, do exactly what he did. They move on. Why wouldn't they? What finally broke it was not the victim's complaint. Sit with that for a moment, because it is one of the most unsettling parts of this entire story. The 89-year-old had already raised the alarm, and the alarm had been talked back down. The person best positioned to catch this fraud in real time, the actual human being whose money was disappearing, did catch it. He felt that something was wrong, and he acted on it. And it changed nothing, because the answer he got came from the one person with every reason to lie. The thing that actually exposed Sarah Wilson was far more mundane. According to court records, in late May 2024, an audit revealed an imbalance in her teller drawer. That is the irony at the center of this case. All those fraudulent entries existed for one reason: to make her drawer balance. And it was a routine audit of that very drawer that surfaced the imbalance she had worked so hard to hide. The cover-up could delay the discovery. It could not prevent it. Cash that is gone, and no matter how many fake entries you stack on top of it, eventually the numbers tell the truth. The bank launched an investigation and, prosecutors say, uncovered the full extent of what she had done. The fake vault transactions, the drained accounts, the $59,700 from one elderly customer, the $42,650 from another, $150,450 in total, taken from the bank, with more than 100,000 of it routed through two people who never knew their money was the patch over the hole. First Citizens Bank terminated her, and the bank did something that mattered enormously for the victims. It made them whole. According to court records, it refunded the stolen funds. The two elderly customers got their money back, not because the system caught the fraud in time to stop it, but because the institution absorbed the loss after the fact. For the 89-year-old who had asked the question and been lied to, the savings he thought were safe really were safe in the end, even if they had been gone for months without his knowledge. The criminal case was just beginning. The matter went federal. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation's Office of Inspector General investigated the agency that policies theft from inside a federally insured bank. When a teller steals from the institution and from its customers, it is not just a local matter. It strikes at the trust the entire banking system depends on, and the federal government treats it accordingly. The case was prosecuted by the United States Attorney's Office for the Middle District of North Carolina, with Assistant United States Attorney Laura Jean Dildeen handling the matter, and United States Attorney Dan Bishop's office announcing the outcome. And the question shifted from what happened to what accountability would actually look like. On August 4th, 2025, according to the Department of Justice, Sarah Wilson pleaded guilty. 3 counts of embezzlement by a bank employee. No trial, no drawn-out fight, an admission. The fraudulent entries that had once made her drawer appear to balance were now, in a courtroom, the evidence of exactly what she had done. Before we continue, please help get this story in front of more people. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment It genuinely helps these warnings reach the families who need them. And if you know someone elderly, recently retired, or in any position where one trusted person handles their money, share this video with them. One conversation could keep another family from finding out too late. In early January 2026, the case reached its end in a federal courtroom in Greensboro, North Carolina. United States District Judge William L. Osteen Jr. handed down the sentence. According to the Department of Justice, 21 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release to follow, and restitution of $150,450, the full amount she had taken. For the two elderly customers, the practical harm had already been undone. The bank had returned their money long before the gavel came down. In that narrow sense, this story has a cleaner ending than most. The victims did not lose their savings for good. The institution stood behind them. The court called the crime what it was, and the woman who committed it will serve time for it. But the ending leaves something colder behind, and it is worth saying plainly. The thing that protected those two customers was not the system working as designed. It was luck and an audit. The fraud detection that was supposed to catch this ran for 6 months without catching it. The fake vault entries fooled the books for half a year, and the one human being who spotted the problem in real time, the 89-year-old at the counter, was told there was nothing wrong by the very person robbing him. So ask yourself the uncomfortable question. If that audit had come later, if the drawer had balanced a little longer, how much more would have been gone? And how many people would have been told their accounts looked fine right up until the moment the money ran out? Because that is the real lesson here. Most people believe the inside of a bank is the safest place their money can be. This case is a reminder that the threat is not always an outsider breaking in. Sometimes it is the trusted face at the window, the one who knows your name, the one you would never think to doubt. Insider bank theft and the financial exploitation of the elderly are not rare events. They keep happening, and they keep happening to the people least able to absorb the loss. So here is what you can actually do. Check the statements and not just the balance, the actual activity, line by line. A balance that looks right can still hide a withdrawal that was covered by a deposit you do not recognize. If something looks wrong, take it seriously even when a friendly employee tells you it is fine, especially then, and ask to see the records yourself rather than accepting a verbal reassurance. And if there is an older person in your life who banks in person, make sure a second set of eyes sees those accounts. Not because you do not trust them to manage their own money, but because the 89-year-old in this story did everything right. He noticed. He asked. He trusted the answer. And the only thing that saved his savings was an audit that had nothing to do with him. The warning signs in a case like this are quiet by design. A trusted insider. Accounts that are rarely checked, money that moves in ways that look ordinary on the surface. By the time anything obvious goes wrong, the damage is usually already done. The protection has to come earlier, before the question gets asked at the counter and answered with a lie. And that is the question this case leaves behind. If the person you trusted to protect your money was the one taking it, and they looked you in the eye and told you everything was fine, how long would it take you to find out the truth? Because the next teller in our files did not just steal from the elderly. When the question started, she looked investigators in the eye and tried to blame the victims, until the evidence proved she was the one lying. That story is next.